My friend and I were talking about drying salts not too long ago, like normal people do, and we arrived at calcium sulfate, which is sold as a commercial product called Drierite. It's not my preferred desiccant for a number of reasons, but its main benefit is that it can be regenerated. It's also available impregnated with cobalt chloride to serve as an indicator that the desiccant has reached its water absorbing capacity. Our conversation quickly turned to how one might be able to make indicating Drierite at home, because we're nerds. Last year, I made a video about plaster of Paris. As of now, it's one of my most viewed videos, and therefore I'm an expert. So I wanted to try making plaster of Paris, but instead of using water, using a solution of cobalt chloride. Here's my very basic experimental procedure, and it amounts to nothing more than a proof of concept. I'm going to see if I can make plaster that responds to changes in humidity, but I'm not going to test its efficacy as an alternative to commercially purchased Drierite. So let's get started. I'm going to use the same recipe from my plaster of Paris video, which is based on volume. Our old friends, the plastic bowl and paper cup, have returned, as has the limited edition HausLab plaster of Paris. But instead of water, I'm going to use this 0.1 molar cobalt chloride solution I just happen to have laying around. I'm using 0.1 molar for convenience, but let's talk a little bit about the proportions and compare that to the proportions of actual indicating Drierite. The SDS from the company that manufactures Drierite says that there is less than 2% cobalt chloride and more than 98% calcium sulfate in the indicating Drierite product. For this test, there are roughly 2.38 grams of cobalt chloride in 100 milliliters of solution and very roughly about 110-120 grams of calcium sulfate as the hemihydrate. For all practical purposes, that's spot on. But as I was mixing it up, it didn't look pink enough. Unfortunately, I'm a little out of practice, so I didn't do the math beforehand and figured there just wasn't enough cobalt chloride in 0.1 molar. So I also had some 1 molar cobalt chloride solution on the shelf and decided to start adding small amounts to the mixture until I felt that it was sufficiently pink. I thought it would be a good idea to get a tray so that it didn't spill all over the place, but while I was wasting time doing that, I remembered that adding salts to the plaster makes it cure faster. So it became a race against time to get it into the little paper cup molds. In hindsight, I could have left it in the bowl to cure, but that's fine. Here we go. I've got 3 of these little cups sort of filled with this mixture. It's got a nice, light but noticeable pink color, which is harder to see with the bright red background. I'm going to leave them to cure fully for a couple days and then move on to the testing phase. Okay, here we are a week later, and what the heck? It seems like there was some separation and the cobalt chloride migrated towards the top of the casts. The rest of the bricks are still light pink, so adding all the extra cobalt chloride seems to have been completely pointless. For the next step, I'm going to put all of this plaster into a plastic bag and then use a small hammer to gently break it up without bursting the bag, hopefully. I'm going to do this off camera because I'm going to use the concrete floor in the basement. I tried to do it on my table, but that was also a pointless exercise. And here we have some rough chunks and some powder and a slightly burst bag. Oh well. To test whether or not this product can indicate the presence of moisture, I only need to dehydrate it and see if it turns blue. Clearly, as it is now in the presence of atmospheric moisture, it is not blue. This is the proof of concept I was talking about before. The proper method is to bake the chunks in a 210 degrees Celsius oven for an hour or so. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to torch it instead. I figure it this way. If I apply enough heat to drive off the water and it turns blue, the concept is proven, basically. If something else happens, well, something else happens. Lucky for me, and for this video, it turns blue. So it seems practical to make your own calcium sulfate-based indicating desiccant at home. It's still not my favorite drying salt, for many reasons, but if that perfect application comes along, I now know it can be done. And if you have a perfect application for it already, well then, I guess my work here is done. Thanks a lot for watching, and a huge thank you to everyone who has subscribed while I've been away from the channel. I'm definitely trying to get back into it, but it's a process. So whether it comes a week from now or another 6 months, oh, I hope not, I'll see you in the next one.